Hey, welcome to the series of everything you need to know about Python in simplest possible way. In our previous videos, we have discussed so many things regarding list, right? So in this video, what we will be doing is that we will be seeing some of the important concept, which is membership and iteration in list. So let's go ahead and start with this particular membership. So membership means we have seen this particular membership operator which is in, right? So in our previous videos we have discussed this particular membership operator is used to check a particular element is present inside of a iterable or not. So list is also considered as iterable, right? So we can check we can use this particular membership operator in order to check a particular element present inside of a list or not. So let us go ahead and see that. Let's say what I will be having is that I will have this particular list 1. So inside of this particular list 1, I will consider some of the elements here. So here I will be considering the elements, let's say 10, 20, 30, 40. So these are the elements that I have. So here I will be executing this. So here in this particular list, I am having these particular elements. So now if I wanted to check a particular element, let's say I am taking this particular 30 is present inside of this particular list 1 or not. So for that, I can use this particular in operator and I can use this particular list that what I wanted to check. And if I execute this, we can able to get the result which is true, which means that this particular 30 element is present inside of this particular list. So let's go ahead and see with one more example. Let's say I am checking this particular 50 in this particular list 1 here, and if I execute this, we are getting false because we are not having this particular 50 inside of this particular list. So for that reason only we are getting as false. So let us consider one more list here. I will consider it as list 2. So inside of this list 2, I will have 10, 20. Apart from this, I will be also having a list. So by this, we can consider this as a nested list, right? Which is a list inside of another list. In this, I will be having this particular 30 and 40. So I will be executing this. So now we can have this particular list inside of this particular list 2. If I wanted to check 30 in list 2, so if I execute this, we are getting false. The reason is because though we can see 30 in this particular list, so it is not directly having it is not a direct element, right? So the reason is because we are having this particular 30 inside of this particular whole list. So if we wanted to check, we need to consider this particular whole list, then only we can check, we can get true of this particular element. So for that reason, I will have this particular element which is 30 and 40. I am checking this particular 30 and 40 inside of this particular list 2, and if I execute this, we can able to get the result which is true here. So like this, whenever you wanted to access the elements that may be having inner list, so in such case you might be getting false. So if you mention the whole list, you can able to get true. So this is considered as iterable, right? I will take one more iterable which is nothing but a string. So let us go ahead and see with that as well. So I will consider list 3. So inside of this particular list 3, I will have 20 and I will consider a string which is like here. So after that, I will consider one more element which is 30 here. So what I wanted to do is that I wanted to access this particular L is present inside of this particular list or not. So for that reason, I am taking this particular L and I am checking in list 3 here. And as we can expect, we are getting the result false. The reason is because though this particular L is present inside of this particular list, so it is not a single L here. So I will change this a little bit. We will come to this again. So we are having this particular single L, and if I execute this, we are getting true. The reason why we haven't get the result as true with this particular example is because we don't have the single L. We are having the combination of other character as well. So because of that reason, we are not getting the true for that. So if I mention like and if I execute this, we can able to get the result which is true. So like this, we can able to check a particular element present inside of a list or not. One more catch here is that whenever we have any iterable inside of the list, and if you are checking the element of that particular iterable, let's say here in this case 30, and in that case we are getting false. Here in this case we are checking L, in that case we are getting false. So when you are checking in those condition, you need to carefully observe that you need to whether you are having the single element or you are having the iterable. So if you have the iterable, you need to mention the whole iterable, then only you can able to get the result. Let's say here if I have 30 also, so after that we are having a comma, and if I execute this, and here instead of this particular list I will mention this particular 30, and if I execute this we are getting true. The reason is because we are having the individual 30 also, because of that reason we are getting true. So like this we will be having all of these condition, all of these concerns whenever we have wanted to check any element present inside of a list or not. So I hope you can able to understand that. So let us go ahead and see one more important thing, which is iteration in list. So list is considered as an iterable, right? So which means the collection of elements inside of a list. So we can iterate through the list and get all of the elements. And if you wanted to perform any actions in those elements, we can able to perform the operations as well. So we are having two different ways to iterate through list. One is using for loop and another one is using while loop. So let us start with for loop, and after that we will discuss with while loop. So let's say I'm having a list 1 here, and inside of this list 1, what I will be having is that I will have simply 10, 20, 30, 40. So I'm taking a simple example to make you understand the concept clear. So here what I will be doing is that I will use a for loop. I will use element in list 1. So by using this element, we are iterating through this particular list. So inside of this for loop, what I wanted to do is that I will simply print this particular element here. So for that, I am mentioning print element here. So now if I execute this, we can able to see the result, all the elements that what we are getting. So by this, by simply mentioning this particular for loop, we can able to get all the elements. Let's say instead of just printing this particular elements, what I wanted to do is that I wanted to modify a little bit. So we cannot directly modify in this case because we are getting the elements through this membership operator. So if you wanted to modify, we need to access the elements through indexing. So then only we can able to modify. So to do that, I need to modify this particular for loop itself. So for that, what I will be doing is that I will start from scratch and I will build the for loop. For we will be getting the index, right? So for that reason, I am mentioning index. In we need to mention the range. So let us explain after completion of this. So I will mention this particular length. So inside of this, I will mention this particular list 1. So what I'm doing here is that by using this length method, we are getting how many number of elements that we have inside of this particular list. So after that, I am using this particular range in order to get the range of values from 0 to how many number of elements that we have. So like that, we are able to getting the range. So we are using that range for building this particular index. So I hope you can able to understand how we are getting this particular index. So inside of this, I will print the index so that you can able to see here. So I am printing this particular index. So here we are getting the index values 0, 1, 2, 3. So by using these index values, we can able to get all of these values, right? For that reason, I will mention list 1 here so that you can able to see clearly. So if I mention this, if I execute this, you can able to get the result which is 10, 20, 30, 40. So like this, we can able to get the elements inside of this particular list with the index also. So for that reason only, I am mentioning this particular length and I am mentioning this particular range. So now, as I have previously mentioned, instead of just printing the elements, we will be modifying the list a little bit. So what I am doing here is that I am taking this particular list 1 and I will be mentioning the index. So then only we can able to access the elements, right? So I can able to get this particular, I need to mention index. So by mentioning this, we can able to access this particular elements. So now what I will be doing is that here I will be modifying this a little bit. So I am taking the same thing here that what we have. So this is nothing but the element, right? So I wanted to multiply this element with 10. So for that reason, I am mentioning multiplication symbol and 10. So we can also mention this particular thing simply by like this. So multiply equal to 10. So by doing this operation, we can able to multiply this particular value inside of this particular list with 10. So at the end, after completion of this for loop, I will just print this particular list to 1 here. And if I execute this, we can able to get the result 100, 200, 300, 400. So previously, you can see the result, right? So I will print list here also before this particular for loop and after this particular for loop. If I execute this, you can see the difference. Previously, before for loop, we are getting 10, 20, 30, 40, and after for loop, we are getting 100, 200, 300, 400. So inside of this for loop, we are modifying, which is nothing but the element that we are taking, and I am multiplying the element with 10. So by this, we can able to modify the elements and do whatever the operation that we wanted for the elements inside of the list. So I hope you can able to understand clearly. If you found any difficulty while understanding, I sincerely suggest you to watch the video once again carefully so that you can able to understand clearly. So let us go ahead and see how we can do this kind of process with a while loop. So for that reason, I will be taking the same list here for the while loop also. So here I am taking the list. So we know in order to go through while loop, we need to have a condition, right? So in while loop, we can only access the elements through index only. So for that reason, in here itself, I will be mentioning the index, which is 0, because we will be starting the index of this particular list with 0, right? So for that reason only, I will be mentioning the index as 0. So here I will be mentioning while loop, while index is less than the length of this particular list 1 here. So that is what I will be mentioning. So as long as this particular index is length of this particular list 1, we need to execute the for loop. So by using this length of list 1, we will be getting how many number of elements that we have inside of this particular list. So inside of this particular list, inside of this particular loop, what I will be doing is that I will just print the values here so that you can able to understand what we are getting here. So if I execute this, so we are going to infinite loop. So the reason I will tell you, so I will restart this particular kernel. So the reason why we are going to infinite loop is because we haven't modified this particular index. So at some point we need to break the loop, right? So we need to modify this particular index so that we can able to break the loop at some particular value. So for that reason, I am increasing this particular index by 1. And if I execute this, you can able to see the result. We are getting 10, 20, 30, 40, which are exactly the values that what we have inside of this particular list. So I hope you can able to understand how we are accessing the elements inside of this particular list using while loop. So we are just mentioning this particular index, which is less than this particular number of elements that what we have. So instead of directly printing this, we will be modifying this particular list a little bit that what we have done in the previous also. So here I am taking the same condition, and instead of multiplying with 10, I will be multiplying with 100. So I will print the list before and after also. I am mentioning list 1 here before this particular loop and this particular print after the loop. So I am mentioning here, and if I execute this, you can able to see the result. Previous to this while loop, we are getting the result 10, 20, 30, 40, and after the loop we are getting 1000, 2000, 300, 3000, and 4000. So by using this while loop and for loop, we can iterate through the list and do some operations on the elements of the list. So I hope you can able to understand this particular for loop and while loop through iterating. So apart from that, I hope you can able to understand this particular membership operations also. So if you found this video interesting, hit a like button. So if you wanted to access all the notes and the explanation and example that what we have given in this video, so I will be given the detailed notebook in the description and in the pinned comment so that you can refer the notebook for the detailed explanation. So thank you for watching this video. In the next video, we will be discussing some more important concepts. To stay updated with my latest videos, subscribe to this channel and turn on the notifications to all so that whenever I upload any video, you will get the notification. So thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.